Today I want to take a look at BYU Studies and an example of how Mesomania has impacted this fantastic publication. I think everybody should subscribe to BYU Studies. I'll scroll down here. This is their splash page. Come to the bottom, and you see right here there's a little popular pages. It's called Charting the Book of Mormon. That's what we're going to take a look at for just a minute. You click on that. It pulls up a page called Book of Mormon Charts here. A lot of really great stuff in here to give you some ideas about how the Book of Mormon is structured, what it contains, and so on. You come down here, and there's a section called Geography in the Book of Mormon. This is what I'm going to look at. We're going to look at 10 essential features, journeys indicating distances, maybe 12 journeys here, and then we want to take a look at plausible locations of the final battles, plausible locations in Mesoamerica for Book of Mormon places, and of course here they emphasize Mesoamerica. So we're going to take a look at each of these, and I'll show you how they are, how Mesomania has affected each one of these. Let's look at the first one here, 10 essential features of Book of Mormon geography. There's a list of 10 things, but first I'm going to show you the explanation. Right here, this is the explanation. It says, many different locations for the setting of the Book of Mormon in the New World have been proposed. While none can be definitively confirmed, some are more probable than others. Archaeologist John Clark has outlined 10 essential features that any proposed Nephite geographical location must have in order for it to be consistent with the text of the Book of Mormon. Now I think that's quite a significant claim. These are essential features that it must have. It should be noted that while the Nephites do not refer to being located near an isthmus specifically, they do refer to a narrow neck of land that separates the north and south areas. Persons interested in Book of Mormon geography who do not interpret this reference as an isthmus have more difficulty fitting their sight to the Book of Mormon than do those who interpret the narrow neck passage as an isthmus. The features listed in this chart are based on the Book of Mormon text. Now I want to just talk about that for a second because it's a typical misleading statement here or claim based on the Mesomania influence. Let's look at Alma 22:32. I pulled it up here already so we have it. Here it is. Right here you can see what it says. And it says, thus the land of Nephi and the land of Zarahemla were nearly surrounded by water, there being a small neck of land between the land northward and the land southward. It doesn't say anything about a narrow neck of land, it says a small neck of land. Keep that in mind because it's a different term. These guys have conflated it with other terms. So I thought let's look at where the scriptures talk about a narrow neck. There's two places in the Book of Mormon. I like to, when people ask me where's the narrow neck of land, I like to say it's in Ether 10:20, and that's the only place. And here's the reason why. You can see how this works. I'll show you. Make it a little bigger here for you. We have Ether 10:20 talks about the narrow neck of land. See that? Alma 63:5 talks about just a narrow neck. It doesn't say it's of land. Narrow neck can be a narrow neck of water, which is a common use of the term. That leads into the land northward. So, we've got three separate terms here. The narrow neck of land, the narrow neck, and the small neck. And yet when we come back over here and look at what they're trying to say in the, say in their geography here, they're saying that it has to be an isthmus, even though the Nephites do not refer to it being an isthmus, and they refer to an area of land that separates the north and south areas. As I've just shown you, there's three different features that do different things. So they're still insisting that you have to interpret all three of those passages to be referring to the same feature, even though the scriptures actually give different definitions. Now let's look up here. Here's where we get into the fun. Narrow neck isthmus divided the land northward from the land southward and was flanked by an east sea and a west sea. But let's go back again, look at the scripture. First of all, this is Alma 22, that's what they're referring to. Alma 22 says nothing about the sea. It says, land of Nephi and land of Zarahemla nearly surrounded by water. It doesn't say sea. What is water? Rivers, oceans, certainly, lakes, even swamps are water. So this doesn't say they were surrounded by the sea. Nearly surrounded by the sea. And then it says a small neck of land. So there was a small neck of land, not a narrow neck. Okay, that's one key point here. The next one on here, they say Nephite and Lamanite lands occupied at least 3 times as much western coastline as eastern coastline. Again, that's their interpretation of the text. The text never says anything like that. Eastern wilderness is much wider and lower than the western wilderness, but not nearly as wide as the southern wilderness. Again, that's pure speculation. It's not an essential requirement in any sense of the term, even though up here they're trying to say 10 essential features. 75 was in a highland valley, Zarahemla was in a large river basin. That one we can say it's probably okay. The riverside flowed northward through Zarahemla. Of course, the text never says it flows northward. As shown in the materials that it doesn't flow northward. The waters of Mormon was probably, notice that, probably, a highland lake of significant size. The text doesn't say anything about it being a highland lake or of significant size. So at least they're saying probably here, but if it's an essential feature, how can it be probably? Zarahemla was surrounded by Nephite fortifications. That's also an assumption. Probably a reasonable one, but what is a Nephite fortification? The city of Nephi was 3 weeks' travel south from Zarahemla and near the waters of Mormon. And that one's based on some travel that we're going to look at in a minute here, but again it's an assumption. The city of Bountiful was north of Zarahemla near the narrow neck. It's about 5 days' travel from Merlin, guarded the route to the land northward. These are just assumptions based on their preconceptions. They're not essential features. Finally, Cumorah, also called Rama, was near the eastern sea, not very far north of Bountiful. There's an interesting problem here with this phrase, eastern sea. It doesn't say the eastern sea, it says the sea east. So and it doesn't say there's only one eastern sea either. So this entire thing here is a reflection of Mesomania, very clearly. But, if that's what you feel like, that's you can make these arguments. It's just they're not essential features, and there's certainly nothing here where it says person is interested in Book of Mormon geography who do not interpret these references in isthmus are more difficult to put in your sight. It's the other way around. Okay, the next one on this list is got we wanted to cover was journeys indicating distances. Now I already pulled this one up here. Here's their map. And you can see right away, what are they showing here? They're showing basically Central America, because that's their preferred geography. They're also saying, and this is actually pretty useful, it talks about how long it took. But notice this one. It says, Alma's group traveled approximately 21 days from the waters of Mormon to Zarahemla. See that? If you look up these verses in these chapters, it doesn't say they went in a straight line. They went from the city of Nephi to the waters of Mormon. From there, they went over to what became the city of Helam, where they resided for a while. And then they traveled to Zarahemla. It could have been in opposite directions. It could have been in the same directions. It just 21 days of travel does not mean 21 days of straight line travel. Then they make this assumption the journey was probably a relatively slow one. Well, the text doesn't say that either. They were fleeing the armies of King Noah, so you wonder why it would be relatively slow. Brother Sorensen here looked at the rates of travel for Mormon pioneers and Guatemalan pig herders and concluded that they likely traveled about 11 miles a day, which leads him to conclude that if they traveled 11 miles a day, they traveled in a straight line, and they traveled 21 days, he figures the journey was about 250 miles. I hope you can see the cascading assumptions that are made here that really make this pretty much a useless analysis. But it does tend to fit his ideas about Central America. In my view, he decided where it was, and then he used this series of rationalizations to make it fit. Certainly not required by the text. Alright, the next one on here, 153, 12 journeys between the cities of Nephi and Zarahemla, right here. This is a useful chart. Gives the approximate date, the length of the journey, the direction they went, although it's northward and southward, not north and south. Purpose of the journey and the size of the group. That's all helpful, but look at these dates. We're comparing from 200 BC all the way to 29 BC, different parts of the land, different times, different groups. It's difficult to come up with any kind of a rational basis for comparing these different journeys other than the general directions. Okay, we want to look at 159, plausible locations of the final battles. This one is probably my favorite one on here as far as depicting Mesomania. The final battles, of course, took place at Cumorah. And where was Cumorah? New York. We don't have anything on here depicting New York. And that's because these guys are telling us that New York was not the place of the final battles. In other words, Oliver Cowdery and Joseph Smith were wrong. So that's their basic premise. From there, they come up with this idea of Cumorah being in southern Mexico because of all the other sites on here that they've listed. You know, you can decide what you want, but this is definitely an example of Mesomania, where they're not even considering the New York setting for the final battles. Okay, we want to take a look at 160. This will be the last one on here I'm going to show, because again they're showing you the Central America. Just want to highlight this real quick. This is land northward, this is land southward. Now, on what basis, if you were living somewhere, let's say you were living here in the land bountiful, are you going to call this the land northward and this the land southward? I don't think so. It's the land west and land east, if anything. Notice here too, you've got the West Sea down here, the East Sea up here. You don't have any North or South Sea, which the Book of Mormon refers to. There's so many things wrong with this, I'm not going to take the time to go through each of them, but I just want to give you an overview of how you can find this degree of Mesomania right here in Book of Mormon, BYU Studies. And not only is it in BYU Studies, take another look at this, right? I pointed this out at the very beginning. When you go to their splash page, these are the popular pages. Charting the Book of Mormon, teaching people that Oliver Cowdery and Joseph Smith were speculating, they were wrong, and in fact the Book of Mormon took place down in Central America. So, there you go. That's BYU Studies for you. Thanks.